The first time Daniel walked into my life, he looked like everything I thought I wanted: smooth, self-assured, and constantly attentive. I was 34 and running my interior design studio from scratch, proud of the independent life I'd created. He seemed impressed, whether genuinely or as an act I couldn't tell. He flattered me with talk of how my drive inspired him, how together we could conquer anything, how he'd always be my protector. I fell for it. At the start, being with him felt surreal. He helped keep client files in order, proofread contracts, and even took on little business chores whenever my schedule was overwhelming. He called it support. I heard love. Every victory felt shared until tiny fissures began to appear. It started as concern that masked itself as control. He insisted on managing my money, steering me towards safer investments, questioning every choice I made. He began taking calls behind closed doors and would return with a new scent clinging to his coat. When I questioned him, he brushed it off with a laugh and accused me of paranoia. I wanted to trust him. The first true jolt came one night while I was folding laundry and heard him on the balcony, voice low: "Once it's all under my name, she won't have a choice." The words stopped me cold. My stomach turned. The man I trusted most had been plotting to take everything I owned. I didn't confront him then. I didn't yell or break down. I started watching. I combed through records, contracts, and emails. I found transfers to unfamiliar accounts and shell companies bearing his initials. I logged every odd transaction and every casual lie he'd dropped over the years. For the first time, the picture was clear: Daniel had been lying to me from the start. But fear didn't take hold, something icy and resolute did. I refused to be blindsided or rendered helpless. The love I had given had taught me one lesson: trust is valuable, but preparation keeps you alive. So when he slid divorce papers across the table asking for half my wealth, surprise wasn't my reaction. I was prepared. His overconfidence missed one vital detail: I knew his moves. And it was time he paid for them. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, the kind of atmosphere that seemed to hold weighty decisions. I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded, heartbeat steady, while Daniel strode in like a man who already assumed victory. He wore the tailored suit that once made him seem invincible, smiled with practiced cool. His lawyer opened with slick charm, casting him as the devoted spouse who'd given up his career to support mine. "Your Honor," he said, "my client worked tirelessly for Mrs. Marquez's success. These assets are the result of joint effort and a shared vision." Daniel watched me, smug, as if my silence proved his superiority. I didn't flinch. I let him perform. Let him feel triumphant. What he didn't know was the months of quiet work that had put the leverage in my hands. My attorney, Grace, was steady and unshakable. When she rose, she brought a clarity that cut through fakery. "Your Honor," she said, "the defendant's assertions are not only misleading, they are grounded in intentional deception. We have proof." Daniel's confident smirk faltered just enough for me to notice. He was accustomed to shaping narratives, but this time the story wasn't his. Grace displayed spreadsheets, bank statements, and files that pointed toward the larger truth. She asked questions that exposed holes in Daniel's constructed tale, though the full reveal was still coming. He attempted interruptions to preserve his innocent image, but the mood in the courtroom was changing. People whispered. Even his lawyer glanced uneasily at the documents Grace laid out. The man who had demanded my fortune suddenly felt uncertainty stirring. When the judge finally addressed me, I rose deliberately. My heels clicked on the polished floor as I faced Daniel and spoke with calm firmness. "He didn't just try to take my money, Your Honor. He tried to take my life, my trust, my independence, and he did it assuming I'd never notice or fight back." Silence dropped over the room. Daniel's face moved through shock and disbelief. I had made the opening move, but the battle was far from over. He had no idea my silence had been the slow accumulation of proof that would leave him speechless. When the judge invited me to continue, I walked up with measured steps, each one purposeful. Daniel watched, still clinging to confidence, unaware his world was unraveling. "I have evidence that will make this clear, Your Honor," I said, voice steady. "Documents signed and verified by Mr. Lawson himself show that the assets he claims as his are legally mine. A ripple of gasps went through the courtroom. Daniel's lawyer tensed. The smirk drained from Daniel's face. I pressed on without hesitation. Grace handed the judge a folder filled with notarized papers showing Daniel had transferred ownership of his companies and properties into my name years earlier, supposedly for tax reasons. The signatures, dates, and official seals matched. Then I played a recording, his voice admitting the plan to a friend. "Once she's done, I'll take everything. She'll never see it coming." The confession hung in the air, blunt and unmistakable. The judge's eyes widened, Daniel's color drained. He groped for words but found none. His attorney scanned the files, then him, realizing the case was slipping away. I looked at him evenly. "You wanted half my fortune, Daniel," I said, cool and precise, "but in your greed you signed it all away. Every asset, property, and account is legally mine. Everything you hid only proves your deceit." Daniel clenched his jaw and murmured something to his lawyer, but the room was quiet except for paper shuffling. The man who had once schemed and demanded was suddenly stripped of power. The judge paused, then declared, "Mr. Lawson, these documents appear valid unless you can prove coercion, which your counsel has not established. The court recognizes the transfers as legal. Your claims are dismissed." Daniel tried to speak again and failed. The arrogance that had buoyed him for years vanished in an instant. I collected my papers with composure and gave him one last look. "You underestimated me, Daniel," I said softly. "You forgot who built everything with her own hands. Everything you tried to steal is already out of your reach." For the first time in years he fell silent. The courtroom emptied slowly, my final words lingering in the polished air. Daniel sat motionless, shoulders slumped, eyes wide with disbelief. His lawyer stared at the paperwork in defeat. I walked past without looking back. Justice had been delivered. Outside, the winter air bit my cheeks but felt like liberation. For the first time in years I inhaled without betrayal pressing on my chest. I replayed the scene, not with bitterness but with clarity. Every late-night audit, every suspicious transfer, every meticulous record had led to this. Daniel had misjudged me, thinking charm and arrogance could change reality. Instead, his own schemes became the proof that destroyed him. He tried to take my life, my work, my peace, but he failed, and was left with nothing. Weeks later I learned his business activities were under investigation. His reputation disintegrated as quickly as his courtroom composure had. I didn't gloat over his ruin. I let events unfold. I realized revenge wasn't about cruelty, it was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. I focused my energy into something enduring. I bought the penthouse Daniel once promised we'd share and turned it into the Max Foundation, a refuge for women rebuilding after betrayal, offering legal aid, counseling, and career mentorship. Every room reflected strength, resilience, and the power to start again. When the foundation opened, surrounded by women whose stories echoed my own, a warmth I hadn't felt in years filled me. Tears came, not from sorrow, but from release. The woman who had once trembled now stood tall, radiant, free. People ask if revenge tastes sweet. Mine wasn't in watching Daniel fall, it was in rising above him. Peace, dignity, and purpose meant more than any fortune earned through anger. Looking out from the penthouse at the city lights below, I smiled quietly. Daniel had been silenced, the judge stunned, and I had reclaimed my life, my wealth, yes, but also my freedom, my strength, and my voice. For the first time in a decade, I was truly unshackled. And I knew then it was the truest revenge of